Hello everyone, I'm here, and it is time. It is time for the Bob Dylan tier list. Alright, here we fucking go. Much requested by about 2 people. So, had to step up and had to finally do this. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put every single Bob Dylan album in a tier. So easy, so simple. I'm gonna give some explanations about some of these bad boys. And hopefully everyone leaves with a better understanding of Bob Dylan. Okay, before we start, I'm going to make this a lot easier for myself. These ones are all part of the bootleg series, and the bootleg series is basically just Bob Dylan releasing kind of outtakes, alternate takes of songs from various different kind of phases of his career. So they're not. I'm not going to say they're bad. I'm not going to say they're good. I'm not going to place them on the list. I'm just going to say if there's like a period of Bob Dylan that you find yourself really liking, there is more often than not kind of more songs you can listen to from that period in the bootleg series. Okay, so I've ordered these chronologically, and it took a long time. So let's start. First album, it's just called Bob Dylan. I think there's only about 2 original songs on this. The rest of them are covers. But there's some pretty nice stuff on here. But it's by no means his best work. And he's kind of just getting into his groove there. I'm going to put this in C tier, I think. And it's not where I would recommend people start if people are looking to kind of get into him. It's not the best place to start. But there's some good stuff on there, like I say. House of the Rising Sun's pretty nice, and Man of Constant Sorrow is also really nice. Okay, we're already hitting the good stuff. Freewheeling Bob Dylan is by far an A tier. There's some absolute bad boy classics on this one. This is kind of the album that maybe a lot of people think of as kind of defining Bob Dylan as a civil rights kind of activist. Blowing in the Wind, and even songs like Talking World War III Blues. So this is when people say like Bob Dylan's political, and he's the spokesman of a generation, which is a word that's kind of phrase that's kind of thrown around a lot with Bob Dylan. They're kind of talking about this album and this album as well. So the next one that I've just put on there is actually cannot remember for the life of me what that one's called. I'm just going to look that up real quick. This is so professional. Let's... Oh yeah, it's just called The Times They Are Changing. This one's kind of weird for early Dylan because it's really bleak and kind of desolate. A lot of the kind of stories that he tells on this one are really... like I said, there's stories of like people going through really hard times. Like I always think of North Country Blues on this one. Of course, there's the song Times Are Changing, which again kind of fits into that mentality of Dylan being the spokesman of a generation, speaking for all the civil rights issues and things like that. Now, another side of Bob Dylan, this is kind of a weird album, I'm not going to lie. This is his first attempt to kind of move away from being a civil rights activist and kind of into just being a singer-songwriter. So there's some really nice songs on here, like My Back Pages. Spanish Harlem Incident is really good. But I think it's more that this album's more about him distancing himself from his past work than it is about him kind of finding his feet and putting out like the best albums he's ever made. Speaking of the best albums he's ever made, we're into the absolute big boys now, and these 3 are all going in S tier. Spoiler alert. So most people will probably agree with this. These for me, these three are his best albums that he's ever made. This is when kind of the poetry and the kind of surrealist, abstract kind of lyrics that he started on Freewheeling really come into their own, and he kind of develops his own style. I think these three albums are all timeless in their own way. Bringing It All Back Home is like a great introduction into folk rock. He then kind of solidifies on Highway 61, which is, for me, about as flawless as an album can get. There's not really a track on there that you should skip. And then Blonde on Blonde, which is always credited as being the first double album. And for how long it is, it's about an hour and a half long. There's not many tracks on there that you think are bad. Maybe for me, I always skip the first track, but everything else on there is actually really amazing. So again, these three, it's all about Dylan being at his best. He's really abstract, he's really surreal, and he's not just writing songs. He's like, you can kind of just read the lyrics, and it's almost like poetry. Not to be pretentious or anything. Okay, John Wesley Harding. He's actually really good. I'm gonna put that in A tier. John Wesley Harding's, again, it's a little bit weird. During this period, the S period, with his three classic albums, 64 to 66, I'm not gonna lie, Dylan was 100% coked out and exhausted and probably a little bit manic. And if you ever see like a video of him in this kind of classic period, he looks absolutely like a skeleton. He looks shattered. Looks like he needs to go to bed. Looks like he needs to stop taking whatever he's taking. So John Wesley Harding is him kind of distancing himself from the S tier album period, really. There's no electric guitars, which will be the first thing that you notice if you go into John Wesley Harding from those albums, and he kind of goes back to simpler songs, and it's more folky. It's like a less bombastic, and it's really kind of stripped back. It's also very famous for All Along the Watchtower, which is also an amazing song. Nashville Skyline, for me, goes in, I don't want to be too harsh, but I'm going to put it in C. It's kind of like John Wesley Harding, except he quit smoking, so his voice is not like it normally is. He's really got a smooth voice in this one, which is, it's like kind of weird. You don't listen to Bob Dylan expecting him to be singing really smoothly, but he does. It's not bad. It's not his worst album. I'll say that. There's a duet with Johnny Cash on there that's really nice. There's kind of a remake of a song from Freewheeling, Girl from a North Country, which is pretty good, but it's by no means his best work. Self-Portrait goes in D. This is where we get into like the funny things about Bob Dylan as an artist. This album, he has gone on to say in interviews, was his way of kind of well, the modern term for it is trolling. He was kind of trolling his record company with this one, so yeah, it's not great. But again, he didn't want it to be great. He wanted it to be bad, so it's bad. New Morning is Bob Dylan's sappy I Just Got Married, Here's Some Songs About It album. So if that's what you're looking for, there is. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid is literally, it could just be one song long. It's only ever known for one song, and that is Knocking on Heaven's Door. Everything else on it is basically just a film soundtrack, and it's not very great. This one is studio outtakes, so things that were meant to be on other albums, but Dylan decided he didn't want them to be on the albums, and then the studio released those songs without Dylan's like consent, and as a result, the album is shit. Planet Waves is actually, in my opinion, pretty good. It's an album with the band, who he would go on to record a couple of other things with, and of course they recorded a lot of their own stuff. It's got some of that soppiness from New Morning, but he also releases some, great songs on there. Forever Young is on there. I always think Dirge is quite good, and my favourite, but Refider will hate me for saying this, Wedding Song. Wedding Song is good, Refider, okay? Don't be angry. Wedding Song is good. Next, another big hitter, Wood on the Tracks. It would be perfect, but there's like an 8-minute song in the middle of it called Lily, Rosemary and the Jack of Hearts, which for me completely throws off the vibe that the album's trying to give. But everything that, even just by looking at the album, you can kind of figure out what kind of album it is. It's Bob Dylan's like divorce album, heartbreak album, Oh No, I'm Sad My Wife Left Me album. It is really good, and again, there's some of his better poetry kind of stuff on there. And it's an album that I think kind of grows on you as you listen to it more. But a lot of comparisons I see a lot of older Bob Dylan fans make is that this would be like here, and that would somehow be better than these three. Let me tell you right now, that's absolute shit. It's not true. It'll never be true. This is good. I mean, we can see it as like a return to form. But calling this better than these three, nah, man. Nah. Basement Tapes. Bob Dylan and his lads messed about in the basement and recorded a couple of songs. That's the result. For me, there's not a lot of standout kind of tracks on there, which is its like least redeeming feature. Even with some of these like worse ones, there's a couple of tracks where you can point out, okay, there's Dylan doing his thing. On Basement Tips, for me, there's not much where I can be like, okay, there he is, being amazing. So I'm putting it in C. But some people really like. Some people might even put it like A or B. But for me, no, it's never done it. Desire goes in A tier. Desire is a really good album. Again, there are some songs on there that kind of stop it being as good as it could be. I don't think like Black Diamond Bass too good, but songs like Hurricane, obviously, Isis is amazing. One More Cup of Coffee is also pretty good. I think this is, again, we can see that these like Blood on the Tracks and Desire is kind of a return to form almost. Again, it sounds a little bit dated now, this album, but I think there's something to enjoy in there for most people. Street Legal for me is a B, and that's probably controversial, but it's the first Bob Dylan album I owned as a record, and so I kind of forced myself to listen to it. I got it for about £2 at a charity shop, and so I forced myself to listen to it and forced myself to like it. Again, if you put that on now, if you put Street Legal on now, it's going to sound dated, but I think he does enough on there to kind of warrant a B. It's not great, don't get me wrong. It's not great, but there's some stuff on there that's quite charming. Okay, now we get to a really funny period of Bob Dylan's career called the Christian period, and I'm going to put all of these in D tier. Can someone please tell me why Bob Dylan thought it was necessary to make 3 albums about how good being a Christian was? Anyone? No, I don't know either. Okay, let's leave that there. They're all pretty bad. I mean, you can tell if like just Google the artwork for Slow Train Coming, and you'll be able to tell how bad the album is just from the artwork. Okay, I promise you. Infidels is a B. This is where Bob Dylan's like, actually, wait a minute, I forgot you can write songs that are not about being a Christian. So it only took him like, I don't know, 3 years to remember that. Infidels is pretty good. Joe Command's on there. And it might even be an A if he had left Blind Willie McTell on there, but he took it off at the last minute, which is a shame because it's one of his best songs. But you can listen to it in, I think, this one. I think it's in there. So if you're curious about what Blind Willie McTell sounds like, go listen to it. It's pretty good. Empire Burlesque is a D for me. This is Bob Dylan kind of finding himself in the late 80s, and he's kind of trying to figure out what should a Bob Dylan song sound like in the 80s, and so he's got all those kind of electronic drums, and there's all sorts of stuff like that. It's not great. I mean, I know I said some of these sound like some of these late 70s ones sound dated, but arguably the 80s one have aged even worse than some of the 70s ones have. Knocked Out and Loaded would be like ERF tier if I had an ERF tier. It's horrible. Again, Google the album artwork and you'll see what I mean. You can tell how good an album is from its artwork most of the time. With Bob Dylan, and that's a classic example. Do not listen to it. Do not ever think about putting it on. This one's a live album. It's also crap. Yeah, it's a pretty dark period for Bob Dylan fans right now. Oh Mercy is... Oh Mercy's not great. But what it is a lot better than everything that had come before it, the 5 years before it. So it's him kind of writing new material, new producer. It's going back to a more grittier kind of sound. It's more classically influenced than the 80s, late 80s stuff, which is good. But it's not his best work. Under the Red Sky is a D. This is Bob Dylan kind of writing an album for his 4-year-old daughter. But critics didn't kind of get the memo. Which is why when there's a song called Wiggle Wiggle, let me see if I can get the lyrics. Oh, Jason Derulo. Okay. Never mind. But it's basically an album for his daughter. But it's not great. This is a cover album. Yep, don't need to say any more. This one's a cover album, also, it's not great. I don't think I need to talk about him doing covers. And then these next three are kind of seen as his late career resurgence. Yeah, so what he does on these three is he finds a style that works. It's quite dark, quite gritty, kind of embraces the fact that his voice is going to absolute shit. And he kind of goes back to the older songs written by some of the kind of blues greats and takes some inspiration from some of those and writes some of his own. So on Time Out of Mind, there's the famous Adele cover, Make You Feel My Love. Bob Dylan wrote that. And these two are also pretty good. But again, it's not a good place to kind of start with Bob Dylan because you have to realise that his voice is absolutely buggered by that point. But the music's not bad. This is a film soundtrack as far as I know. Christmas in the Heart is obviously a Christmas album. If you want a funny experience, go listen to Must Be Santa. Bob Dylan trying to do a Christmas song with a voice that is, let's just say, past its best. It's an experience, I'll say that. And then these next four are all kind of where Bob Dylan is, I don't know really what he's doing, just being an old man, I guess. Being an old awkward man, doing old awkward man things. Triplicate is probably a C, but sitting through 3 hours of Bob Dylan covering Frank Sinatra is not exactly anyone's idea of fun. And then these three, I'm gonna see. I don't want to be too harsh, but I'll put them in C. It's not bad, but a lot of it's not original material. It's him just kind of rearranging songs that other people have done. A lot of it's kind of Frank Sinatra covers. You know, I mean, at 80 odd or whatever you are, I don't know how old he is to be honest. At 85, that's probably the only thing that you can find any fun in doing, I imagine. So, here it is, my Bob Dylan tier list. If you are curious about where you should start with Bob Dylan, my advice would be start as early in his discography as you can. So I would start with Freewheeling, kind of get an idea about what early Dylan's about, maybe understand why people hailed him as a civil rights saviour. And then if you like it, do Times Are A-Changin'. If you don't, I would go on to his folk rock stuff, so these 3 albums. I would definitely do Bringing It All Back Home and Highway 61. Again, they're not for everyone. I think with Bob Dylan, kind of having context where he is in his career kind of helps you understand the album that he puts out. So I wouldn't jump into Blonde on Blonde and, you know, kind of just try and take it in because it is quite a dense album. But definitely try these. Definitely do try these 3 after you've tried Freewheeling. And then again, if you like them or don't like them, definitely do one of the tracks, and then, you know, maybe something like John Wesley Harding or Desire, if you want something to round it out with. But anything below C, I would say, stay clear from, and probably stay clear from Street Eagle. That's just me being sentimental. Okay, so hopefully this gave you guys an understanding of one Bob Dylan expert's opinion on where his albums place. Thank you very much for watching.